Alright, so we just finished up our appointment with Isaac's doctor. The last time we seen him was about a year ago, according to the doctor. Today is May 20th. It is 12 p.m. And the weird thing about Isaac's appointment, we did record a lot of stuff from back then over a year ago, but it never made it onto YouTube or anywhere. So we're gonna actually have to locate that footage, maybe even compile it with this footage. But basically what happened when we went to his evaluation, it was in Gainesville, Florida, at the University of Florida, and the doctor is a
developmental pediatrician.
We found some odd things about the appointment from a year ago. We were in a tiny little room. It was just the doctor. It was Isaac. Malia was with us. Aubrey was with us. So there were six of us in this tiny little room. And the room had to have been like 5 by 5 feet. Like, it was tiny. It was just enough room for the desk and a little bit of floor space. Only lasted about 20 minutes maybe. He just basically kind of talked to Isaac, played a few toys with him. He pretty much said that he sees a lot of signs of autism and pretty much made it sound like Isaac was pretty bad off.
Said that he seemed like he was only on an 18-month level, when at that point Isaac knew all of his letters and all of his letter sounds, so that didn't seem like an 18-month-old to me. So
yeah,
it was a lot to process.
Yeah, he kind of made him sound like he was
developmentally delayed
by like a half a year to a year. He was trying to make him sound developmental delayed, and we didn't agree with that. Later on, we found out, you know, he told us come back in a year, and he made a approval to where Isaac could get occupational therapy and speech therapy. So we did put Isaac into that right away. We tried to get ABA therapy for Isaac, but there was a lot of pushback on that. So, and then the pandemic happened.
Yeah, he got approved for it literally like 2 weeks before everything shut down. Right when they were about to start, they couldn't.
And what we found out was a month after that original appointment a year ago, the pediatrician, Isaac's pediatrician, called one night at like 7:30 p.m. It was really odd. Once again, an odd appointment, and then the doctor calling at 7:30 at night was kind of odd.
She's a great doctor, but she never calls that late unless we're like waiting for something.
Like an emergency.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think most doctors ever call anybody after like 5 p.m.
I answered, and she said she was sorry for calling so late, but she was wondering why we didn't call her because she's going through the notes and Isaac was diagnosed with autism, and she just wanted to talk about all the options of what she could do to help and to see about if we were just going to go with the same providers for Malia, if she needed to do anything paperwork wise for us. And I just kind of let her talk for a minute because I just remember the room kind of spinning and kind of feeling like I was falling through the floor, not because autism scares me, obviously, but like I went to an appointment and I wasn't told anything, and then my pediatrician is on the phone asking me why I didn't ask her for any referrals because on my kid's paperwork he's listed as autistic. So it was like a lot to just randomly get when you're serving dinner. At
this point, it's like a month later after this appointment at the University of Florida with the developmental pediatrician. When the appointment was over, he just said, you know, I'm going to give him these therapies and I'm going to follow up with him in a year.
I thought that we would revisit in a year, which would have been the appointment we had today, and that's when we would have gotten a diagnosis.
And due to the pandemic, the appointment took place in Malia's room instead of at the University of Florida.
It was via telehealth.
And so after that phone call, a month after the original appointment, we began to wonder more about that appointment, because how in a 20 to 30 minute appointment could you diagnose autism? So we were very confused. Although the doctor did say, I think he has 20, 30 years experience and he can spot out autism walking through Times Square. Which, you know, I could agree with that if you've been around it long enough. So
we can normally pick up that kid might have it, I know.
Right, yeah, we even being on YouTube now, we've met a lot of people who have autism that have been drawn to us that don't announce it right away, but we kind of know. And then eventually they tell us and we just kind of smile because we already knew. So today he pretty much talked to Isaac. Isaac has been very upset with the pandemic, not wanting to talk to anybody on video chat. He thinks he's been like abandoned by them, so he's like upset over it. But today he actually interacted with the doctor. The doctor asked him what kind of cars he was holding, what kind of fire truck, what color it was. One bulldozer he had was blue and green. Isaac answered blue and green.
And then said, but you didn't ask about the wheels and they're black.
Yeah, and then he was giving the doctor extra information. So the doctor said he was very impressed that his verbal communication has improved a lot.
Because when he went to the appointment last year, he was speaking in like one word sentences. Not that one word is a sentence, but that's the only way I know to put it across.
Yeah, he was...
He would hand you his cup and say more, but he wouldn't say more milk, please.
The doctor did say he is very excited that he's forming sentences. We thought, of course we thought he'd be impressed because we knew the improvement. Isaac had a lot of improvement up to that appointment, because initially when we scheduled it, Isaac wasn't doing so well at all, and that's why we did it. We're not those type of people who are like, oh, one has autism, we want them all to have autism. No. We were noticing stuff that wasn't good, and I was walking on eggshells.
I think what helps our family a lot is the fact that I did work with kids for a long time, and then we have Aubrey, so it's not like we only have Malia to compare Isaac to, even as like a family dynamic. Like, we know what Aubrey was doing at Isaac's age, so we can see and compare what Aubrey was doing at Isaac's age versus what Malia was not doing at Isaac's age and what Isaac is currently doing at his age. So obviously we've been around a lot of special needs kids because of clinics and events for Malia, and we know all the signs because of Malia. We didn't go into it thinking, hey, let's get him an autism diagnosis, or, we probably would have pushed to make Aubrey look autistic.
No, like I said, 1 year ago when we left that appointment and we were told everything we were told, we were kind of upset with that doctor. We did not agree with him.
No.
But once we found out that the diagnosis was on the paperwork, I kind of still didn't believe it. Thought it was more of like a clinical error.
I didn't believe it because I still don't believe that at that appointment he was that far delayed. I just don't see
Right,
it.
and when Malia was diagnosed, she was diagnosed at All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's a major hospital down there. And that involved like recording her for an hour, interacting with her for an hour, a secondary appointment. I can't remember specifically because it's a long time ago and it's kind of irrelevant. But
I think that we had like 3 different appointments. Like, we had like an initial intake, then they made us bring her there so they could video record them playing with her, and then we had like a follow-up because they reviewed the footage of how she actually interacted with people, and that was the diagnosis.
So that was at All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. It was a lot more intense. It was, if I were to estimate the appointments and everything, it was a good 5 hours. So here we are, 20-30 minute appointment in a tiny room. The other fact is some people abuse the system and they want autism diagnosis to get all the benefits of it, and they will push for it, kind of like a Munchausen's disease or whatever, I guess.
But please don't believe that there's like enormous benefits to be had for living this life, because the stress and everything that you have to do just to make sure your child can survive is not worth trying to get a diagnosis. It's just...
Yeah, it's not worth trying to, but people do it. We see it a lot. We've witnessed it a lot. People do want the diagnosis even though their kid is like 1% autistic. So we were very shocked because typically you have to fight for a diagnosis. Like with Malia, we went to so many appointments where they just said she's too young, but then you see things that say act early intervention is key. So we were confused by that.
A little background on Malia, just really quickly summarized, is she was in preschool, because I taught preschool, from 6 weeks on. And I started noticing signs at like 14 to 16 months. We started trying to get her diagnosed between 16 and 18 months. And we got pushed off by so many different doctors and so many different clinics. She wasn't officially diagnosed until she was 3 years old.
So once again, bringing back to Isaac, it's like, okay, a 20-30 minute appointment in a tiny room with like minimal interaction, and now all of a sudden you got an autism diagnosis. So we still just, time went by, we put him in the therapies. And
that was one thing I was excited about getting it on the paperwork. I figured whether or not I agree with the doctor, his speech does need help. He is a little bit behind on motor skills, so we'll just hurry up and get him into these therapies, because nobody wants to do anything unless you have that have a diagnosis of some kind.
Yeah, and that's why we never really told anybody either, because it kind of like, does he really or does he not? And we're just going to kind of roll with this. At least he's getting some help.
Right.
And then we'll go from there. And we knew, like I said, he was progressing before the appointment and he was progressing after the appointment. So we knew that maybe eventually it won't even have to be a topic. Fast forward a year, he's very verbal, he's very sociable, he likes to interact.
He plays with his sisters.
Yeah, he's really good at playing with Aubrey. He does try to play with Malia. He knows his entire alphabet. He knows all of his colors.
All his letter sounds.
He knows places when we drive. He can name every place, every store.
He can read certain words.
He's very smart, but at the same time, he has quirks. He has to sit at an exact chair at the table. If you sit in that chair, he will not like that. He has to mix his chocolate milk every time you make him chocolate milk. He always wants to come home.
He will only eat literally off of 3 different plates and only 1 bowl.
Everything kind of has to be in an order. He's the only kid I've ever seen that, like, he's upset now when we leave the house. It's been a fight to put on his shoes and get him dressed to get him out the door.
Getting shoes on and stuff was never an issue for him because we were always taking sisters to school. We were going to therapy. We were doing things. As you know, we go on a lot of adventures with the kids, but now that we've literally been in quarantine for the past 2 months. So he's just used to being at home now, and now that's routine. Going out is no longer routine. So now we don't want to go out because we don't do that now.
So we see just that, like the doctor said from the first appointment, one thing I remember he kept repeating was that everything is Isaac's way. It's his way or the highway. And he couldn't have been any more right than that. Like, that's the way it is. So now we're working on correcting him. And thank God, it's a miracle, he doesn't have meltdowns when you correct him. He gets upset quickly.
He'll run to his room.
He goes to his room. He'll scream. You can hear him. And about a minute later, he comes back out and he's talking and laughing and back to himself again. To bring you up to speed, we just had the Zoom appointment due to the pandemic. And it was the same doctor, and once again it was pretty quick. I'd say overall maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah, about that.
He was super excited about Isaac's progress, but at the same time he kept saying, he kept referring or using words they do this, they do that, or it would be caused by it, or this would be caused, or it would do this and that would cause it. So he never officially told us that your child has autism. So throughout the entire Zoom now, we're like 10-15 minutes in, and he's going over like what the plans would be as far as ABA therapy, how to work with his behaviors. We're explaining all the little things that have to be so super specific with Isaac. And at the end of the call, we pretty much, just the way he used the word they, I knew what he was getting at.
I just wanted to hear.
But man, I wanted to hear him say it because he never did. And from the first appointment, it was already on the paperwork. So at the end of the call, I said, so I tried to get him to say goodbye to Isaac. And Isaac, of course, wanted to say goodbye.
Isaac has a really big problem with transitions. So he won't say goodbye to people right now on video chat because it's just another transition. He just so he starts saying no, not right now. So the doctor got to witness that, but then I knew the doctor was ready to go because that's what doctors do, right? They're like, okay, see ya. So I said, one last question for you before you go, and he said, okay. And I said, so just to verify, is it clear that you put autism diagnosis on the paperwork? And he said, yes, I did. That's what he said, right? He even checked his head. He said, yes, I did, with a smile. So I don't know how to take it because I guess we've been secretly under presumption that that's how it was. And so now you question, why would a doctor do such a quick diagnosis and make our child seem so delayed? And I think it's because, like he said, he has so much experience, he could just see it. I think where he doesn't have experiences, he doesn't like the doctor doesn't like the emotional aspect of breaking the news to people. So I think that's how he avoided doing it. He didn't want to look us right in the eyes that day and say, I'm diagnosing your son with autism. He just didn't want that part. I don't know how we would have handled it if he just outright told us. I'm not sure, like, if we would have freaked out on him or said, how can you say that? Or, I'm not sure how it would have went, and if we would have been as sad or not. I do remember leaving that appointment and I was doom and gloom. It was an 1.5-hour trip home. Yeah, it felt like getting punched in your stomach.
If you look at the time frame, we caught him about 6 months sooner than Malia, I would say.
Yep.
And we found a doctor, complete 100% opposite experience by far. I mean, that was the first appointment ever.
Yeah, that was his first appointment ever.
With Malia, we told you we brought her everywhere, and she was plain out obvious. She wasn't saying a word, and then him.
No eye contact. She didn't answer to her name. She didn't speak. She didn't have fine motor skills. There was no reason why she waited until 3 years old. We were blessed enough to get therapists who could see all the signs too. Obviously, they can't make a diagnosis, but she was only approved for speech because she wasn't talking. They wouldn't give her the autism diagnosis because she was too young. I didn't agree with that, and I pushed back on early intervention constantly with doctors. Her speech therapist would do activities to also incorporate occupational therapy, with fine motor skills and stuff. She would do speech therapy activities, but still kind of sneak in those other skills to help Malia because she could see how hard we were fighting, and it was obvious. It was obvious to everybody but the people who would not give her a diagnosis.
And complete opposite with Isaac, 6 months ahead of time, first appointment, first location, first little tiny room, and bingo, So that's another reason why we just were in disbelief, right?
So with Malia too, her pediatrician, because she was so young, great pediatrician, but he wanted to just say, well, let's wait till she's 24 months, let's wait till she's this age because it might come, it might just be because she's young. But with Malia, with their current pediatrician, who we love, she asked about if we had any concerns, and I told her this, the routine and the few little things that we did notice, and she said, let's not waste any time, let's just hurry up and get him in because either it's there or it's not, and I'll write you the referral, you'll leave with it today, and we'll just move forward from here. This way, if we can get him help, we'll get him help. And I remember just being shocked because it was the complete opposite experience that I had with his sister, who was so blatantly obvious. So I thought with him it would be even harder if he had something going on, whether it be autism or just a sensory processing disorder or something. It would be way harder because it was so hard for his sister, who is so obviously autistic. And it was a complete opposite all around experience for Isaac.
So that points out a very, very good point. If you're in the middle of a fight and you're trying to get a diagnosis, the pediatrician plays a very important role. So I'm glad she brought her up, because this pediatrician has been phenomenal with understanding every aspect of autism and doing everything she can within her doctor powers to make sure we get the help that we need, or help we may not need, but to rule it out. And so that's what she did in this case. She acted right away with everything she could, all the authority she had, because what was there to lose, I guess. So she made sure, to get him screened. Like Manda said, it doesn't usually happen that way sometimes with a lot of doctors. So that would be one thing I would look at right away if you're in this long rat race that we were in.
I would say if one doctor says no, and in your gut, because you as parents or caregivers, when something's off. You just do. So if one doctor says no, find a different doctor. Do what you need to do to help the child or the adult in your life that needs intervention, because doctors don't always know best. Doctors don't always agree with you, and I'm not saying just go to do it, but if you legitimately know and you're getting the pushback that we were getting with Malia, we didn't stop. She saw literally over 6 doctors. She went to psychologists, she went to psychiatrists, she went to developmental pediatricians, she went to regular pediatricians, she went to the hospital, she went to neurologists. She went...
The only thing we didn't switch up really was the pediatrician, and that's because we were in more of a smaller rural city, and there weren't that many options per se. There was one other one we were dealing with, and we had issues there beyond autism issues. So we switched to this one, and he was really good, and everybody loved him, everybody. So we never thought, I guess, of switching because of that.
Right. And that's why the pediatrician ended up calling us at 7:30 at night on a random weeknight, was just because she was curious to why I didn't ask her to send over referrals, because he had gone at least 2 weeks prior to her phone call to me. And she was like, he's got autism listed on this paperwork, so I'll get his referrals out first thing in the morning, but I didn't know like if they didn't discuss it with you or if you were just holding off for a reason. And like I said, I couldn't really answer her for a minute because it was just, that's not the phone call I was expecting from her. I thought it was going to be about I missed an appointment or something. I don't know. But that's how great of a doctor we have. So your pediatrician is incredibly important, because for her to do that, to just make sure he could get his referrals out 9 a.m. was amazing.
That's like going above and beyond for sure, especially from a doctor who you can always tell they don't want to give you extra time. You know, it's always you wait an hour in the waiting room, and then you're in the room and you got to speak fast and forget what you're saying because they're rushing you so much, and then they're off to the next patient. And that's clearly not the case with our pediatricians. So today on the Zoom call, the 1-year checkup with the developmental pediatrician, we still didn't hear him mention the words autism. So
Is that Isaac?
I think it is. Okay, hold on. Isaac's calling us. Okay, so we were just interrupted there by Aubrey screaming because Malia decided to take her cup of Kool-Aid, pour it into her bowl of Cheerios, and then splash around in it. So that's what we just dealt with. I want to wrap up by basically saying that we still didn't hear the doctor 20 minutes in say that Isaac has autism, and Amanda didn't want to hang up without the doctor saying it. So,
or saying that he didn't. It wasn't that I was pushing for it.
Right. But he referred to they
a lot, but I still wanted to concretely hear it.
Yeah, so at the end of the call I just said, so is it safe to say you added autism to Isaac's official paperwork? And he basically said yes with a smile. And that basically meant that it was official even a year later, right? Because we've seen it on the paperwork, but like we said, we were never confident about it. So he said, although that is the case, like obviously he's very high functioning, and with a lot of therapy and stuff, you would probably never even know if we never said anything. We could decide to not even tell him or even them. I don't know if that's something we'll do, because at the end of the day, I don't know if that would make a difference or not, because he is so high functioning.
But I feel like it's important for him to know, because if he is so fixated on something and friends do come along and he is different, I feel like that's gonna mess with his psyche more than knowing like, okay, this is why like I feel like this has to happen.
So do you think like Aubrey should know? I mean, I guess she's gonna have to.
I would, yeah, I think like family, close friends, I mean, obviously it's fine for like YouTube to know, because
put it this way, if Isaac was the first kid to have autism and it was the level of autism that he has, according to the doctor, I don't know if we would have started a YouTube channel for that, right? I mean, because it's so high functioning.
But I feel like that's why YouTube should know, because if anything, it helps people trying to learn about autism even more, because you can see Malia, who is so profoundly autistic, who has so many challenges. And I mean, Malia seems incredibly well behaved and Malia seems incredibly smart, and she is those things. But I just want people to realize like she's 10 now, and we've had her in therapy since she was 2 years old. Right. So it's been a lot of hard work on our part. It's been a lot of hard work on her part, way harder on her part. So I feel like it's important as far as education wise to show how vast the spectrum is. Like here's Isaac, who can do all this stuff independently. He can use the bathroom, he can eat with utensils, he can use big words and memorize and read things. And then there's Malia, who could very possibly read, we don't know because she can't talk.
And one thing I want to point out with Isaac is that we pretty much know that autism runs a lot more in boys, and there's controversy over that.
I think possibly because it is more in boys and it's genetically, I don't want to go down, I don't want to get into like any like debates about what causes autism. I'm not doing that. So, but all I'm saying is it's been shown genetically, like if there's like, what is it, like an 80% chance that they won't have autism and a 20% chance that they will in siblings. Somewhere or something like that. Yeah. And those aren't exact numbers, but his sister is profoundly autistic. I do have a cousin who has autism, and then he has this form of autism, and he's a boy. Aubrey is not autistic. Could it be because she's a girl and it just happened to skip her? Possibly.
Right.
Could it be because she was just not meant to have autism?
From being like on YouTube and stuff, we know that most families who have one child with autism usually have a second. That kind of was surrounding me too when I was kind of fearing it somewhat.
Right. And the fact that he was a boy was what had me really nervous.
Right, because obviously statistically the chances were much higher. You know, and knowing families, it's usually not one child, it's usually more than one. So that I don't know why they haven't determined that, but that kind of almost pushes towards genetic in a way, I guess. But
yeah, like even I have a few friends who have, if they have more than one child, even if it's not full autism, they might have a sensory processing disorder. But normally if there's a sibling, they do have something neurological. Not all the time, not 100%, but commonly.
So yeah, so there you have it. The doctor officially said that Isaac does have autism, that he is on the spectrum. He wouldn't say that he was Asperger's.
Because it's not a thing anymore.
He did mention the word high functioning, so I gather that Isaac's on the spectrum and he's high functioning, which would be what people can relate to, which would be Asperger's. So it's, I guess, bad news, but it's also news we've been kind of slowly accepting for over a year now. He's progressed a ton, so I can't say that I'm like terribly sad or upset over it, because there's a lot of hope, you know. Like as far as Malia goes, they were saying, oh, if she doesn't speak by 6 and she's never going to speak, and then it went up to 8, and now here we are at 10 and she's not speaking. So as far as hope there, yes, there's still hope, but
yeah, like, we're never giving up hope on our daughter. Have we accepted the fact that we might never hear her talk?
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you have to at age 10, right? Like the cutoff was 6. Well, no one knows, but the supposedly cutoffs were 6 and then 8, and now we're at 10.
I honestly think they told us 8 to make us feel better when I was upset at her 7-year-old appointment.
So, but with Isaac, it's to the point where, like the doctor said, it could get to the point where like you don't even know he's got any kind of disability per se. Part of me is like, kind of like, oh, this really sucks, and part of me is like, well, it's nothing new, let's just move on and keep doing what we've been doing. So,
and I feel like with Isaac being obviously on the complete opposite end of the spectrum than his sister as far as like profoundness, I feel like if we've been able to make so much progress with Malia to where she is now, I feel like we can definitely put that to Isaac as well.
Yeah, and Isaac actually has it easier because he is third child, so he's...
And what people don't understand a lot is we can reason with Isaac. Like, I can be like, listen, the orange spoon is in the dishwasher and you can't use it. But with Malia, and he can go back and forth and say, can I use the green one instead? And I can say yes. With Malia, she wants the orange spoon, and she's not... I can't go back and forth with her. You can't have that.
Even if you have the Dynavox or sign language, it's still difficult. Nonverbal is a whole different world that I've witnessed. Once again, through YouTube, there's not many out there. YouTube is full of people with high-functioning Asperger's autism where, like, even we're camera shy and we have trouble doing it. But there's people with autism all over YouTube that could speak in front of a huge crowd at the White House. You know, like, so I don't know how they do that. You know, that's amazing that they can do it.
Which is why I feel like it's important for YouTube to know that Isaac is diagnosed with autism.
Right.
Because we can show this is autism, but this is also autism.
Right. And I found it frustrating with what she's saying, because in our YouTube adventure, we haven't met many at all nonverbal girls with autism. It's just like a whole different world almost. You just don't see it really. And even in life, we haven't met many that were nonverbal with autism being a girl. So
we go to a lot of special needs events. We go to therapy all the time, and I just don't see nonverbal girls.
Right.
Like,
so,
I mean, obviously they're out there, but I'm saying a lot.
And nonverbal autism in general, like, you still don't hear a lot about it. Like, people Like we went to this case study a few months back. I still have video footage on that, by the way.
There's a video coming out about that.
And they just, the first appointment, the first phone call, the second appointment, these people just did not get non-verbal, and they're like medical professionals.
There were doctors.
It took until the last appointment for them to disqualify her for being nonverbal.
Well, they actually asked me, does she speak at all? And I said, no, she is nonverbal. And they said, so if we showed her the calendar up here with the dogs on it, what would she say? And I'm not even kidding. They said it with a straight face. And I looked at them and I said, she would say nothing because she cannot talk. I said I could put like pictures on her Dynavox of like a cat and a dog and have her pick the right one, but if you ask her, she's not going to tell you the answer. So then they ended up taking myself and Malia's behavior therapist in a back room with Malia, and they were asking me like, well, you say you homeschool her, so how do you teach her if she can't speak? And I tried showing the curriculum and how she can, press answers. She can communicate with us. She's very smart, but she can't verbally tell you anything. And then that's when he was like, oh, then she won't be able to answer the questions.
But it took literally to the second appointment and like several phone calls for them to say that. So they still ended up paying us, I think it was $100 Visa gift card, which was really nice of them to do, because of, it was traveling and everything too in our time. So, and we were very clear from day one with them. So I don't know why it wasn't figured out in the first phone call.
Especially with the point being made that these were doctors and medical professionals that were doing this study to learn more about autism, which was kind of disheartening to me because you're completely leaving out nonverbal autism. So how are you really learning about autism if you're leaving out an entire sector of it?
Yes. So the whole thing kind of was just, once again, the whole topic about nonverbal, which is something we'll get more in detail with later, I'm sure. That's your update for today. Isaac's right here, as you see. And
say hi, everybody.
Do you want to say hi? Say hi, YouTube. Good job. Say please subscribe. Ready, set, autism family. Good job, buddy.
And the table.
Say please like this video.
And the table.
And the table.
And the teddy pool.
Oh, please like the video of the kiddie pool.
Yes, he wants you to like. He loves the video of the kiddie pool, which you probably haven't seen yet, but he
And I
loves
put
it.
cars in the teddy pool.
He puts cars in the kiddie pool.
Yes, he loves watching.
Oh, and that's another thing that he does that we've always been a little bit.
If you look in
iffy on.
videos, you'll see he does like this happy dance. That's something we definitely.
We call him Happy Feet, like from the movie, because he like does his little dance.
Yeah, or we call him also Wobbly Man, like the signs on the highway, because he and some of the movements actually were very similar to Malia. Like there's one where they get excited and then they go.
When Malia was really little, she doesn't do it much anymore. She still does the face, but when she was little, she used to go.
Yeah.
When she'd get super excited. Now she just kind of goes.
Yeah, and he's been spotted doing some of her movements too, like to the point where it was almost identical, and
but
that was
at that point too, maybe denial, I don't know, but we were like, well, he mocks Aubrey because he's learning from her. He mocks us, so he could just be mimicking Malia. But now, obviously,
yeah,
he probably.
And we see it clearly in videos and stuff where he does the funny movements, and we just call it the Isaac dance. But all right, so we just wanted to get this on video while it was fresh on our mind. So thank you for watching.
Thank you.
If you do have any questions, I highly recommend putting them in the comments.
Yeah.
Now's a good time to discuss this type of stuff when it's happening. So thank you for watching. Isaac says bye.
Bye.
And we're gonna go back to.
Please try this video.
Good job.
What's our
buddy.
name? What's our channel?
ReadySteadOutFamilyBlippy.com.
He always gives a shout out to Blippy. He loves Blippy. So anyway, thank you for watching, and we will be hopefully seeing you guys soon.
Yep.
All right.
Bye.
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 There's an